The trends that we're seeing in crossbows right now is that a lot of the baby boomers are starting to get older, and when they want to go pull their bows back, maybe some of them haven't shot their bows for a while, they pull them out in August and get ready to go hunting and they can't pull them back anymore. Or maybe they go out in December when it's really cold, they've got a deer below them and they can't pull it back anymore, and they're starting to switch to crossbows. One of the really cool trends though that I'm seeing is that more and more youth want to get out and do some hunting. And our youth these days are very, very busy. They're playing football, they're playing hockey, they're playing baseball. They've got a lot of things going on in their life. And if you can get your youth to do a lot of archery practice and get them proficient, then great. But a lot of them can't. They're just busy doing a lot of other things. And what we can do with the crossbow is really in some pretty short training sessions, get them to be really proficient. My son the last 2 years has tagged a really nice gobbler at the age of 9-10 years old, and what we usually do is about 4 or 5 weeks before he's going to go out, we start shooting on the weekends, and we'll just come out and do a nice hour session on a Saturday. We do that for about 4 weeks, and by the time it gets time to hunt, he's ready to go and he's ready to shoot, and he's very proficient, and he's had some really good success with the crossbow. The other thing we're seeing is a lot of people that have not hunted before, but maybe, you know, there's a lot of people in urban areas that are kind of afraid of guns, but they want to be proficient. They don't want to wound animals. They want something that they can be really good with, and this is something with the crossbow that they don't have to put in years and years of work to become really good at it. They can put in a little bit of time and become accurate enough to go out and hunt and feel good about putting meat on their family's table without being really super experienced with archery equipment. So those are really the three biggest groups that we're seeing people getting into crossbows. When it comes to basics of the crossbow is really pretty similar to your compound bow. So if we go like this, it's basically, this is actually a recurve. Let me show you a compound crossbow. If we go like this, you'll see that the construction is pretty similar. You know, we've got cams, we've got limbs, we've got a riser. The main difference is, and this is something that people, if we were shooting the crossbow today, that you would see, is going to be sound. So when I shoot this bow, this is going to be way quieter than this. And one of the questions we get from a lot of people is why is this so much quieter? And it's pretty simple. We've got 60 pounds here, and we've got, you know, about 34 inches axle to axle. And here we've got 175 pounds, and we got about 18 inches axle to axle. So we got 3 times the amount of energy in a spot that's half to a third as small. So more energy equals more sound, and that's kind of where you get that noise. Now with the crossbow, and really even with the compound bow, how we create energy and how we create speed when we're looking at crossbows, there's 3 ways we do it. One is going to be with our limbs. So we've got limbs on the recurve, we've got limbs on the compound. The other one is going to be what we call power stroke in the crossbow industry, but it's simply your draw length. So our distance from here until we get into the trigger, that's our power stroke. And the third way to create energy is going to be with our cam system. Now obviously with the recurve, we don't have a cam system. So that's how we're going to create energy. It's really similar to that, same way. With most crossbows, once you cock them, the only way to decock them is to shoot them. Now more and more crossbow companies are coming out with ways, because people want to be able to decock their crossbow without shooting it. This is an Excalibur. It's really probably the most popular recurve crossbow that's out there. The main difference between the recurve and that compound crossbow, we've got more energy to create the same speed. Now that crossbow there is going to shoot about 350 feet per second. This one here shoots about 350 feet per second. 175 pound draw, 280 pound draw, because we don't have cams here. There we have cams to create energy. So to create the same energy, we need more weight. So that's the drawback with the recurve. Because we have more energy, the recurves tend to also be a little bit louder. Now the advantage to the recurve though is that we don't have cams, so we don't really have timing issues. There's just fewer issues just because we have really nothing here. All we have is limbs and a trigger system. So there's very simple. If you guys wanted to go bear hunting or something up in Canada and you have a breakdown with that crossbow, you're probably done hunting. I mean, you're gonna have to find an archery shop that can put that into a press or something for you. With this crossbow, if you broke a string or something, you put a stringer on there and you string it back up and you keep hunting. So very, very nice system with this one as well, but there is a couple drawbacks, like I said, with the sound and just a little bit more draw weight with these bows. Another question we get a lot from people is, what is the difference between, here I'm gonna decock this crossbow. What is the difference between a $300 crossbow? We've got some $300 crossbows out there. You don't have to spend $1,500. What's the difference between that $300 and $1,500? Couple differences. A lot of times it's going to be speed, but they are making faster and faster crossbows at a lower price. You'll see your other components like scopes will be much better on the more expensive crossbows. And a lot of it is just the sound system as well. The more expensive crossbows are usually going to have systems on it to pull that sound down. Probably one of the biggest things we see though, just because most of your really inexpensive crossbows at $300, they're being made overseas. Usually everything is coming out of molds. So when you do molding, the plastic molding process, as that plastic cools, there's some warping in that plastic. So your accuracy usually fails. Now if you take this crossbow or this one here, this Mission, the rail and most of these components are all CNC machined. So they take a block of aluminum and they put it into basically a super computerized machine, and it machines those so that all the parts are perfect all the time. And when we take this crossbow and we stack it up to something that's more inexpensive, you're usually going to see the big difference is going to be accuracy. A lot of people will also say, well, if I buy that crossbow, I'm just paying for the name. You're right, you're paying for the name, but there's a reason they have that name, and that is if you have a breakdown or you have an issue, it gets taken care of really fast. You're paying for that service. Whereas some of the more inexpensive crossbows, I get the phone call once a week. Hey, I bought this crossbow off of Amazon and now it broke, and can I get parts? And for some of them you can, but for a lot of those really inexpensive ones, you're pretty much out of luck with it. And that's why it comes in at the price it does. So another thing that people ask us about is, what is the most common mistake I can make with my crossbow? Probably one we see a lot is if we're hunting in the ground blind, like Mike was talking about, where somebody, you're looking through your sight, and you know, your arrow's below your sight. Same thing here. If I'm sitting here and I'm looking through my scope, I can actually run the arrow through the blind. So a lot of times as you're hunting with the crossbow, especially if you're hunting in a blind, you want to make sure that you have clearance. A lot of times you're looking through the scope and you can see things, but maybe your arrow's pointed right at a rod or a strap. A lot of times with trees too, if this is the tree and I see my deer here and I'm lined up, now when I'm cocked, that limb may clear that tree, but when I shoot, that limb's going to hit that tree. So whenever we're hunting, we always want to make sure, well, even when we're target shooting, I've had some people break some bows target shooting. We want to make sure when we're lined up to shoot that our limbs aren't going to hit anything. Probably the biggest, most common mistake though, is what we call a partial dry fire. And with the partial dry fire, what happens is somebody goes to put the arrow in their crossbow, and this first thing, you see this silver thing that's moving right there? That is the anti-dry fire. So what happens is they go to load their arrow, they hit that anti-dry fire, and they feel that little bump. They feel a little click, and they say to themselves, okay, I'm cocked. If I were to shoot this crossbow right now, it would probably not be good. It would shred the arrow, because my arrow is not all the way up into the string. So we always got to make sure our arrow is touching the string. If we have good knock to string, everything is good there, everything's going to be good when we shoot. But that is probably the most common way that people break their crossbows, is that they don't have that arrow sitting all the way against the string. And if you shoot it like that, when the arrow's not touching the string, we're going to have a partial dry fire situation. And that's typically how they get broken. Any questions? I think that was, okay, yes.
If you shoot a crossbow, are you needing to aim a little bit lower because of the noise? Does that affect the aim on an animal?
A lot of it really depends on how the animal comes in. And that's kind of the question, the answer to a lot of questions with hunting is, it all depends. If you have an animal that's out feeding in front of you that just happens to be kind of walking through the woods and browsing and very relaxed, usually the arrow is going to travel fast enough that you're not going to have too big of an issue with that. If you call a deer in and that deer comes in, he's fired up, he's ready to fight, or he wants to know who's calling in his woods, that deer is going to be on high alert. And when you shoot, it's gonna jump that string. With a crossbow, you do have more sound, but generally you're going to be faster too. This bow here, with the hunting setup on it, you're typically going to be 280 feet per second, whereas this one here, we're shooting this at about 350 feet per second. So we've got a lot more speed and power that can overcome a little bit of that. But if we're shooting at 70 yards, it's still going to take almost a second for the arrow to get there. Hopefully we're not taking a lot of shots at 70 yards, but if you're shooting at longer distances, obviously more time for the animal that you're shooting at to react to that sound. Good?
Do you shoot at longer distances then, just because you're using a crossbow versus?
I would say again, it depends on what you're doing. If I'm hunting like this and shooting like this, and when I go bear hunting with my crossbow, I usually am not going to take shooting sticks with me, just because I'm typically going to be taking 15 to 20 yard shots. If I'm hunting deer on a food plot and I might have a 70, 80 yard shot, shooting sticks. Definitely you're going to want shooting sticks. 'Cause if you're hunting like this and we're shooting free-handed, honestly, I think I can shoot a compound bow a lot better than I can shoot this, because all the weight on my crossbow is out front. So I have to support it with this arm right here. And when I shoot this bow, I've got my hand in the bow, and when I pull that string, that helps me keep this front head steady, because I've got two different forces acting against me. Whereas I'm hunting with this bow, I have really nothing out front, so I have to support everything out front, and I can get a little shaky, especially when I got a whitetail or something in front of me. So at longer distances, if you have shooting stick, I think a lot of people can maybe shoot a little bit further than they can shoot with their compound. But honestly, most of the time I tell people, if you're proficient at 30 yards with that, you're probably going to be proficient maybe at 40. I mean, you still have to hold the thing steady. All the things that go into shooting well with that translate here. So if I'm shaky with that, I'm probably going to be shaky with this. Shooting sticks help though. And if you're in a situation where you can use shooting sticks, you can get a little bit better distance out of it. But I would definitely, if you think you're going to be hunting on a food plot area where you may have longer shots, you're definitely going to want to practice those longer shots and just see if you're capable of doing it. A lot of it is just like with this bow too, arrows. If I have higher quality arrows, I'm going to be shooting better. If I've got lower quality arrows I'm shooting out of my crossbow, they're not going to shoot as well. So same dynamics that go in here apply here. So, all right. Thanks, guys.